Should we choose to accept the final reckoning, the 8th mission in the Mission Impossible franchise? Let's talk about it. Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning is the 8th installment in the Mission Impossible franchise. It's set a few months after the events of its predecessor, Dead Reckoning, where Ethan Hunt and his team must stop a terrifying AI model called the Entity from destroying the world. So every time there's a Mission Impossible movie coming up, I get excited. This is a franchise that turns 30 years old next year. It's widely entertaining and thrilling because of its exhilarating action set pieces. And it's also consistently great. And that is a rare thing to find in a franchise that has 8 movies in, because each installment, surprisingly, has just got better and better and better. I think the only movie that I would probably say is okay at best is the second one. It's not a bad movie by any means, but comparing it to the rest, it is definitely the worst of the bunch. And with the case of The Final Reckoning, I was excited for this movie because not only does it serve as a direct follow-up to Dead Reckoning, because if you watch the film, the Dead Reckoning ends on a cliffhanger note, but this is supposedly the final movie of this franchise, but after seeing it, I highly doubt that's gonna be the case. So they had to go big, and I can say that I enjoyed this movie, just like the 7 movies that came before it. But I didn't love it, and compared to the rest of the movies that came out over the last few years, unfortunately, this is one of the weakest ones of the franchise. And to the contrary of my recent reviews, I'm gonna start with what I don't like first before I get to what I love about this movie. The Final Reckoning takes the Mission Impossible franchise to grandiose levels that has never reached in the past in terms of its main premise and its action sequences, which I will get to later on. This is a big movie, but bigger doesn't always mean better. First of all, yeah, it's long, like really long. I don't think it has any business being nearly 3 hours long, and you feel that runtime in the first half. There are a lot, and I mean a lot of flashbacks from the previous movies and dumps of exposition thrown at you to explain what happened in the past that leads to the events of this movie. Now, it's good to remind everyone what happened because some people will forget, which is a natural thing, and I kind of get that. But at the same time, the audience isn't dumb either, and there is just in my opinion, there's just far too much explanation here. The characters tend to repeat and explain what they will be doing over and over and over again. And some flashbacks are also show up a few times, which I found very, very bizarre. And what's also bizarre is that this movie takes itself way too seriously, man, and it doesn't need to be, because you're in the 8th installment of this franchise. The tone is a very somber one. There is constant dread throughout the film, and that really bogs down the pacing of the movie and also its humor. And the jokes here, they are a bit forced, I'm not gonna lie. And also the dialogue doesn't help either, because there is some really clunky dialogue from some of the characters here. It just doesn't need to be that taken much seriously. That first hour, especially on rewatch, is a bit of a chore, and I'm not gonna lie, I nearly fell asleep a few times while watching this in the cinema. Now, I have to be completely honest, I was on just a few hours of sleep when I watched it last Sunday, so that maybe didn't help the cause, but nevertheless, I wasn't expecting that to happen in a Mission Impossible movie, which really, really surprised me in that regard. Now, one of my biggest issues with Dead Reckoning was Gabriel, the main villain, played by S.I. Morales. And unsurprisingly, he returns here, since this is obviously a direct follow-up to number 7. And yeah, he hasn't changed. He's still a standard villain, he hasn't fleshed out, he's still very weak. And here he has even far less screen time, because after that opening act, he doesn't show up until the last act of the film, the last hour of the film, more like. So, now you might think that I hate this movie. I don't. This is still a good movie. I'm just disappointed because my expectations were quite high, since this franchise has been so good over the nearly 30 years that it's been going on. And now, even though there is a lot of exposition and flashbacks going on in that first hour that do drag the pacing a little bit, there is still progression going on with its storyline, and the movie really shines in the second half because the action arrives, and the action may take a while to show up, but Tom Cruise, Christopher McQuarrie and co. weren't lying, because the action in this movie, to the surprise of absolutely no one, is absolutely spectacular. There are 2 absolutely ridiculous and epic set pieces here in that second act that are worth the price of admission alone, that are worth the price of admission alone to go and see this at the biggest cinema possible. And let's talk about the main man here, Tom Cruise. This guy is 62 years old. He is the same age as most of my family relatives, and at this point, the guy is a certified madman with the way he risks his life by doing his own stunts. Whether climbing the tallest building on planet Earth with the Burj Khalifa and Ghost Protocol, whether he's hanging onto a real plane in Dear Life with Rogue Nation, and even in the previous installment, Dead Reckoning, where he's riding a motorcycle and he jumps and transitions into a base jump mid-air. The stuff he does here, whether on air, land, or sea, is just fucking insane. I went from almost falling asleep in the first act to being in the edge of my seat in the second act with its action, and you can feel the anxiety and the adrenaline coming at you with full momentum and full velocity, thanks to Tom Cruise. The guy is a Hollywood superstar if I've ever seen one, and he loves the movies till the day he passes away, and that will be a very, very sad day when that day arrives, God forbid. And I also love the relationship between Hunt and his IMF team. It's still there to be seen, and it's great. Hayley Atwell, Simon Pegg, Ving Rhames, and even Pom Clementine are all very worthy additions to the cast. And even though the tone is a very somber one, there is still that charm and fun factor with the entire team is still there to be seen. And I also am very, very happy to see Trammell Tillman have a chance on the big screen, because if you've seen Severance, you know how great this actor is. And here he plays the commanding officer of a submarine, and he nails the parts brilliantly. He has a very significant role in the middle section of the film, and that's where the first epic action set piece arrives. And I'm really hope that he has more similar roles in the future, because the guy is a superstar in the making. So, with all things considered, The Final Reckoning isn't the strongest installment of the Mission Impossible franchise because of that bloated first act, but it's still worth watching on the biggest cinema possible because of those action set pieces that still show how entertaining and thrilling this franchise still and will always be. I'm giving Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning a 70%. So those are my thoughts on Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning. If you've watched the movie, guys, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, and I want to hear them on the comment section down below. If you want to see more of this content, hit the subscribe button down below, and I'll see you for the next video.